Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our next session. We're getting Kausar. Stanford Center for South Asia and Art Forum SF welcomes you all to the 5th edition of the South Asian Literature and Arts Festival 2024, or SALA as it's popularly known. Thank you for coming and being a part of this festival. Before we begin, a big thank you to all our sponsors, you can see them up there, who've enabled us to bring this quality of festival to our Bay Area. Today's panel is, we have Kausar Munir in conversation with Dr. Anjali Arondekar. A little bit about Dr. Anjali Arondekar. Dr. Arondekar's work engages the politics and poetics of sexuality, caste, and historiography with a strong focus on comparative empires within South Asian and Indian Ocean studies. Currently, she holds the Peggy and Baskin Foundation Presidential Chair in Feminist Studies. She was the founding director, Center for Southeast Asia Studies, CSAS, 2020 to 2024. Just a few house rules before we begin our program. Please keep your cell phones on silent, and there is no video recording. There will be a 15 minutes Q&A after the discussion, and books by the author and other authors will be available for sale and signing outside in the atrium. Please also, if I may request you, if you brought in any bottles of water, please do make sure that you clean up after yourself. Please also visit our art exhibition area above the BCC and vendors who are supporting this festival. We would also like to remind you that today's Shashi Tharoor panel has been moved to the Hawk Auditorium, and it's going to be at 6:15 p.m. And with that, let's welcome our panelists with a big round of applause.
Thank you, and Jai Bhim, Salam, Namaskar, and welcome to a wonderful time to spend your lunch. You have food for thought. You do not need real food. Any conversation or guftagoo with Kausar Munir, who I have had the pleasure of conversing with last year, is always going to be delightful. I know many of you already know her work and have sung her songs and been aroused and roused by her beautiful words. So I'll just say a little bit about who she is, in case there are some folks here who are not familiar with her very, very large corpus of work. Kausar was born and raised in Bombay and now Mumbai for some of us, and more importantly in Bandra, where I'm from. One can never leave the Sandra from Bandra moniker, regardless of our religion. Kausar has done too much for me to recite here. Suffice to say, she is a lyricist, a poet, which is apparently a moniker she is nervous around, which I will be calling out, an artist, a dialogue writer extraordinaire, starting first in television with a series that I remember watching, Jassi Jaisi Koi Nahin, that so many of us remember chuckling and often groaning over. She's also written lyrics for many of the memorable songs that have become part of our musical repertoire, and most importantly for me, in multiple genres, from Dhoom 3, Dear Zindagi, Begum Jaan, Gehriyan, and more recently, of course, things like Mr. and Mrs. Mahi and Maharaj, and has won multiple Filmfare Awards for Best Lyricist. The Jubilee song, of course, is my favorite, Wo Tere Mere Ishq, and for those of you cricket lovers, which I am not, I'd rather play tennis, but you know, she also wrote the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2021 anthem, which actually I have listened to, and I have to say it's not as good as the rest of your stuff, but it's not bad.
Well, I thought you'd say Lehra Do. I think that's more of a cricket anthem now.
Yeah, and I was also, anyway, I will bring some other really interesting projects you've done and made them exciting when they shouldn't be, but we'll get to that anon. But because we live in such complicated times, I'm going to take my privilege as the person who's asking you questions to begin with a small nazm, which reflects the difficulty of our times by an amazing Pakistani revolutionary poet, which of course many of you here will recognize, Habib Jalib. And I'm just going to read a small nazm to reflect where we are in a time of genocide and war. And the nazam is called "Ae Jahan Dekh Le." "Ae Jahan Dekh Le, kab se beghar hai hum, ab nikal aaye hain leke apna alam. इतना सादा न बन तुझको मालूम है कौन घेरे हुए है फिलिस्तीन को मैं जहां देख लूं कब से देखूं बेघर है हम." I wanted to begin with that because one of the most beautiful things about Kausar's work is her ability to speak lyrically about secularism, poetry, gender, joy, and so many other things that are part and parcel of our daily lives. So I wanted to begin with a question about your writing. I've listened to lots of your interviews in preparation, and one of the things I've heard you say is that you were not supposed to be an Urdu writer. You were lurched into Urdu adab because you grew up in a family surrounded by it. But as you and I have talked, you went to a convent school, you majored in English literature, you worked with our wonderful Eunice. So it's not something that you trained to be, but it was in your pores.
I didn't train to be a writer in Urdu, and I still am not. When during the pandemic, in fact, during the COVID years, when we were all kind of cooped up at home, is when I actually learned to read and write the language by an Abhishek Shukla ji, no less, from Lucknow, who took classes over Zoom. So yes, it's kind of a sore point with me, more than a regret, because regrets are about something that you didn't do. This I managed to kind of correct what actually my family should have done right in the first place. But I grew up in a bit of a, if those of you who are aware of Indian television, in a kyunke saas bhi kabhi bahu thi kind of mahal. So there was so much struggle and strife in the sort of domestic scene that, I think they forgot to actively impart culture and language and art to me and my sisters. We are three of us. But so you're right, I imbibed it. I imbibed it because I did grow up in a household where my father's side of the family came from Aligarh. So Aligarh Muslim University, I mean, so many people went there to study Urdu literature. So it was kind of unfortunate, and that's my Freudian, issues with my father's side of the family. But ghar ka mahal aisa tha that you had people like Kefi Saab and subsequently Javed Saab and Majroo Saab and Dr. Rai Masoom Raza. So these people came to the house, and I as a little girl was kind of peering through the doors and the windows and the curtains and just listening. So basically मैंने उर्दू सुनी है, पढ़ी नहीं है
और महसूस की है.
बिल्कुल महसूस की है. So my training is in English literature. I mean, if you want to call it training, nobody can, I suppose, teach anybody to write or, be an artist.
Please tell my students that,
yes. I'm sorry. But so it's kind of, but what is beautiful about growing up in a city like Bombay then is that it was a truly cosmopolitan city where, in fact, when I wrote, because we learned Hindi in school, so I'm very good at Hindi, in reading and writing Hindi, far more than I'm proficient in Urdu. And so when I wrote essays, and we had that Nibandh Lekhan, which is, the essays, writing essays, and I'd always have my Hindi teacher write, give me good, a good score and good numbers, but she would write in the margins that, कृपया उर्दू शब्दों का प्रयोग कम किया करो, just use less Urdu. And I was like, but am I using Urdu? I don't know, because I couldn't tell the difference between Urdu and Hindi and Marathi and Konkani, so many of these words, and just like Urdu, because it's an amalgamation of, my daughter and I, we were sitting and talking about how she goes, just now, how she goes to this Yemeni bodega in New York, and she says to them, Sabah Noor, which is good morning, and Sabah and Noor and Khair, these are all words that we
come
have
from
in
Arabic and Persian.
Exactly, yeah. And there are daily words in Urdu. So, Khair.
No, but I think you're asking a question that is very central and holds futurity for the world we live in now. I think we're all grasping at visions of unity and and togetherness in a time when there is a paucity of that. So I wanted to gather that a little bit. And for me, whenever I read your work and listen to your work, and I'm inspired by the genres you work through, it's always Hindustani, right?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I wanted you to say a little bit about your relationship to Hindustani, which you just explained a little bit about, that it's a melange. I'm a queer theorist, and when students ask me what's a queer poem, I always say it's a poem that fancies other poems, right? But in some ways, I think about Hindustani as a love letter to our world, as it were. So I wanted to hear a little bit about how you manage Hindustani, but also how you manage it in genres. I mean, you started as a screenwriter. You've written, and when I was doing research, you wrote for Banega Swasth India, this concept, and you made it, I mean, it's like brilliant. But you're also you're promiscuously, in the best possible way, moving through these genres. So how do you do this, genre shifting and working through Hindustani, English? There are all kinds of things we can say.
Yes, I get what you... Because that's the only way I know how to do my work or how to write what I write. And that's the reason why I'm reticent about the use of the word poet. Because to use the word poet in any language, you have to have a certain mastery over the language or the classical traditions of that language and the poetry that comes with it. So I understand perfectly well when the classical poets, people who've studied language, who have labored over the rules and regulations and the forms and structure of poetry, seem to feel that, lyricists or songs or jo geet or nagme hote hain, they don't have that kind of, rigor or, if I may use the word, caliber. But what I suppose some people fail to realize is that the requirement of a song or of a screenplay, though it may have poetic and it should have poetic elements and literary elements, it's serving a script. It's serving a completely different narrative, and it's serving a larger audience, and that's the goal. The goal is to be able to reach as many people as you can, so that it's in that sense, film is not a documentary or it's not a diary. So I'm happy if people like my work, but I'm happier if it gets the numbers in. Now, coming back to what you were talking about, the whole Hindustani. So I feel that kind of what we call a mass audience that we are catering to in the film business is the Hindustani audience. And when I say Hindustani, I don't mean India, just India. I mean an entire diaspora of South Asia, of people who speak in Urdu, who speak in Hindi, who speak in Punjabi, for example. Because it's people who, I write so many of my songs have Punjabi elements in it, and people ask me, "Arey, aapko Punjabi aati?" Maine katai nahi aati. But it's because you have heard these songs and you have heard, seen these movies and read this poetry. It is, so now the debate is, are you kind of, being casual about it and usurping it, or are you kind of furthering the language by adding elements in it? So that's what I try to do, because I know no other way.
But I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, I may say, because in some ways you're right. You're imbibing these languages, forms, emotions, a mahol, all of these things. But you're also writing an item number, you're writing a love song, and they all require, and I've heard you say in an interview, and we need to know about this, that the hardest thing for you to do is write an item number. Like, I'd write a song. It's easier for you to write songs of forlorn grief and love. And is that a personal preference, or... But because I know you love to dance and party, so what,
Party, yes. Dance, I don't know.
But no, it's a serious. But I'm being a little bit facetious. But it's a very serious question, because the flexibility that you have is your strength, because you move so deftly. But it's also different feelings. And as my father, who was a poet, used to say, you either feel poetry or you don't. There's no translation, right? So
and that's another very interesting topic, translation. Sometimes I'm appalled at the subtitles of the songs that I've written. I'm like, what's going on? So anyway.
Well, you said Hindustani, so koi bhi kuch bhi keh sakta hai.
I mean the English subtitles. So what did you ask me?
No, I was basically saying, how do you manage to work through different genres?
Oh, and
like
the item song.
number,
So, okay, so now I will
And
use
feel
that.
free to share जो भी आपके मन में आए.
I'll use that dreaded phrase now as a woman in writing, a woman lyricist, which are there are very few of us, hardly, you know, एक हाथ पे आप गिन सकते हो. Now that kind of, if the character on screen is a nautch girl, she's a tawaif, she's a prostitute, she's a bar dancer, she's not going to sing a bhajan or do a nazm, you know, so she is going.
I'm from a Devadasi community,
Yeah, okay.
yaar. हम लोग
So,
भजन बहुत
well,
गाते
not
हैं.
in the bar
Darken,
situation.
yeah.
So how are you going to deal with that? So I per se don't have a problem with the concept of an item number. Yes, the word item is a kind of, you know, we can do better there. But I think it's again the caliber of the poet. An example that I often and always give is that Bidi Jalaile, Jigar Se Piya from Omkara, or Kajrare from Banti and Bubbly. These are Gulzar Saab songs. They're absolutely wonderful so-called item numbers, but the caliber of the poet is such that, you know, he's able to entertain and yet maintain some sort of, you know, poetic and gender dignity, you know. As opposed to Fevicol se chipkale or murgi gatakle. So I think it is
Kesaria.
Yeah, well, Kesaria is it's that's a different conversation. Though I don't have a problem with per se doing an item number. The problem arises in doing it mindfully. How do I entertain? How do I cater to that tamasha feel without making the woman become the item rather than presenting an item? So that is the difficulty.
I mean, I think you're also asking a bigger question, if I could just pursue that a little bit. I've also heard you say, I think you said this last year because we had a panel on gender and media. You sort of said that, you know, what was really interesting for you was how no one aspired to be a female poet, but, you know, we always heard references to male writers who were poets. So the profession of poetry writing was not something you didn't do, but to say you were a poet required a different kind of arrangement. So I wanted to hear a little bit about, you know, I mean, we know that male lyricists who've been around, as you said, and there are too many of them to know, can speak and think and write for women, and as they should. Gender is a flexible form, but it is rarely the other way around. So if you're writing, so how did you navigate that in the beginning of your career? Were you sort of given songs or genres that, entre guillemets, women were supposed to write, and how did you gently remind them that you were bigger than that category?
So, I mean, it was by me becoming a lyricist was quite by accident. I was interested in writing for the screen, so yes, screenwriting and dialogue writing. And while I was doing one of these assignments, one of the directors who knew I kind of have a flair or an interest in poetry asked me to kind of fix one of the songs that they were doing. This was a film called Tashan, and I ultimately ended up writing that song. That song was Falak Tak Chal Saath Mere. Now that was a love song. Luckily for me, and I'll say luckily because that's my experience and it's not it's not the norm, is that I was kind of not, I was judged on merit. And more than merit, at that point it wasn't a question of merit because the job was just kind of presented to me and I was able to do it. And then the next job came along. And I feel it's not so much the people who are offering you these opportunities, but the people who are kind of on the outside who are looking at it. I have people ask me, oh, do you write both for the male voice and the female voice? And that is mind-boggling. How is love different? Or anger or any other emotion that you are kind of trying to portray through song. So I feel the perception is far more different than the ground reality within the industry. And I also feel that the Hindi film industry, the Bombay industry is such that hire the person who gets the job done. You know, and then if that person turns out to be successful, man, woman, motorcycle, you know, you kind of then run with it. And I think because there's so much at stake, so much, and always everything had to be done the day before yesterday. So I suppose I happened to be at the right place at the right time, and I won't take away from my.
Of course, yeah.
But I managed to do the job and continued to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the questions that I've heard, people who enjoy your work, they also enjoy your range, right? That you are able to, not just genre, but you can write with different inflection, with different mood. So inevitably, the question that one must ask, but I'm going to ask it in a different way because they're not giving me any money for this, is not who are your influences, because we all have influences, but to take you back to what you began with, which you said, I grew up in Bombay, I absorbed things. I was what in fancy academic speak we would say you're a palimpsest. Things got registered, you absorbed them.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah,
by myself.
कुछ तो सिखाना पड़ेगा ना आपको. But so in some ways you have, and you see that. I mean, I've been a fan of your work, and you're writing for a very long time. The beautiful thing is how you move through so many different mediums. So I will ask you the question of, not just who are the writers, who are the poets. And I also know you like short stories, which is a genre I think we need to work more with. So I wanted to hear about your influences, but not in, I love this author, that. Yes, that too. But also because one of the challenges, especially for young artists, as you know, and even for young writers, is, the plagiarism, influence. It sounds too much like this is too Western, etc. So can you say a little bit about how you think about your own, influences in terms of or who are the people, or who are the ideas, or the voices, let's just say voices because it could be anything, that animate your creative world?
Well, as you were asking me this question, I was kind of thinking about these sort of visuals were washing over my mind, and I was thinking that I have always, and even as a child, I love art that is formless. So, and that's why I kind of shy away from using words like poet, this, that, the other, because it is rooted in some sort of structure and tradition and some sort of history, whereas I love formlessness in any kind of art.
Interesting.
So even when I heard the radio growing up, when I heard the Binaka Sangeet Mala, which by that time had become Sebaka Sangeet Mala.
Quite.
I was really little, and I realized that I like a certain kind of song. And then when I was older, I realized that was Gulzar. And because Gulzar is able to say things like "Humne dekhi hai un aankhon ki mehkti khushboo," which is controversial, क्योंकि भाई आँखों की खुशबू, but इसीलिए तो भाई poetry है, वरना आपको की खुशबू नहीं होती. So those kind of things, or stating the obvious. Again, Gulzar, गीला गीला पानी, हाँ भाई पानी गीला है, but to put it in that poetic form was very fascinating to me. Or Eliot, for that matter. I was obsessed with Eliot in college, and so I was, even now, before I was at an old bookstore, and I picked up yet another old copy of the Four Quartets, because I'm like, again, the vastness of the references.
Interesting.
And I'm sorry, but I keep coming back to the city that I grew up in. The cosmopolitanism of that city, there's an Ambani monstrosity on one road, and just they share a wall with the largest slum, or you have a burqa-clad woman on Janmashtami will always invariably have a little kanhaiya with the Mor Mukut walking for some fancy dress, and that is I just cannot escape in that city. You can't escape the multiculturalism and the formlessness. So it's in a way that chalta hai, and that jugaad sort of philosophy of Bombay is, I feel, there's something there which kind of has influenced me. So as you can see, this answer has been all over the place. So
that is the point. Yeah.
That's how and I get bored easily. So I do screenplay, and then when I'm bored of screenplay, I'll do dialogue, and then I'll do song, and then there'll be some Richie Rich wedding in Delhi where they want a private song for the family to sing together. I love all that. So I will go and have all their cuisines, which some.
But I mean, I think it's interesting that you're joking about it, and I'm grateful for your candor and your joy. But obviously, if you were a man, you wouldn't even have to qualify it.
Yes.
Right? So I'm just, I know we don't want to make this about gender, but it is in some ways.
No, of course it is.
It is, and yeah.
Yeah, because, well, when earlier when you were talking about women and poetry, I mean, it is, I still have people say, so what do you do for a living? I write, I earn a good
You should
living.
show them your
I just bought a
contracts, yeah.
designer bag. I get paid well, for doing this. So, yes, that you cannot take away the gender question from...
Yeah, I think what I've liked about what you're saying as someone who makes a living thinking about long histories of gender is that gender is also about capital, right? So you can
Absolutely.
you have to be good at what you have to be a successful. You can be very good and not successful, which we're going to get into in a minute. Before I know you all are here to read and listen to Kausar's wonderful words, and she has very generously agreed to read something for us towards the end. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about, not all good poets can be good lyricists. And I know, and not all lyricists can be good poets, right? And you've mentioned Javed Sahab's name quite a bit, I've listened to many of your interviews. So tell me why, because for those of us, मैं शायर, नहीं वगैरह, we've grown up with a sensibility which assumes that those things are porous. And you said you like formlessness,
Yes.
you like porousness, but there's some kind of, tell me why a poet may not be a good lyricist.
So Anand Bakshi, a fabulous lyricist, and when he says, "मैं शायर तो नहीं," and he never thought himself a poet, as I say, the modern day Anand Bakshi is Amitabh Bhattacharya, fabulous lyricist, a close friend. He in fact gets agitated if you use the word poet, because he says, "No, I cannot write a line without the melody." So just for you guys to know, 9 times out of 10, you write the song, you write the words on the melody. The melody, the meter, the structure, everything is given to you. That's a very skillful job. So a poet will react or be inspired by her surroundings, and she will write, what she wants to write, and then think about the publication or think about the reading or whatever, how it is to be presented. A lyricist is writing for a script, for a producer, for a director, for a music composer, for an actor, to a meter, to a structure, to a tune, to a melody. So it's a completely different skill set. And like I said, of course, you have to bring in some poetic elements, otherwise it becomes आज blue है पानी 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 पानी
गीला 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 गीला.
But if you have to bring in poetry, and you have to have that, you have to have that foundation. But it's a completely different skill set. And back in the day, you had so many wonderful and highly respected poets who came to Bombay wanting to become songwriters, and they didn't. And vice versa. So I'm not being cute when I say I'm not a poet. I'm just kind of, I am, trying to, because I'm still trying to find, well, not my voice, that I know what it is, but I'm trying to find a place for that voice.
So when you say a place for the voice, I mean, you have such a dizzying and impressive array of venues and genres that you work in. What is a place of meditation for you? And I don't mean meditation in the diasporic, whatever. No diss. I'm diasporic too. But Mane, not like you go to camp, vagara, but Mane, what is a place of where you sit, which forces you to sit still as an artist? What is For me, it would be I go to the archives. Very boring answer, but I'm a historian.
I was going to say reading.
Okay.
It has to be reading, and reading all kinds of things, different kinds of things. Interestingly, although in the pandemic I learned to read and write Urdu, I'm better at writing it than reading it.
You move from left to right to right to left. Yes.
So, but yes, so my meditative place is definitely reading. And when I said, the reason I spoke about Urdu is because I read a lot of Urdu writing in Hindi, in the Devanagari script. And that itself is, because, okay, the other problem with Urdu is you have to know the damn word to read it. And I don't know all the words, I barely know half of them. So and the Devanagari script is very precise.
Right, when I read the Nazm, I read it in Devanagari.
So it's very precise. So when you have to write your name, there is no, there is no F in philosophy. So
quite.
so that makes it easier. And so reading for sure. Reading is fine.
Before I let you enthrall the audience with your words, I wanted to ask you, have you ever thought about writing a short story? Because I heard you say in an interview how much you love someone whose work I love, Ismat Chughta's writings.
Absolutely.
And I wish people would make more of her beautiful short stories. That's one of the few genres you have not traveled into. Have you thought of writing, I didn't say novel because you said your attention span is short.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
But short story is, it's not a screenplay, it's something else.
I've just written a short film.
Oh,
Which
interesting.
I want to explore the possibility of perhaps making it myself, just to know if I can do it. But short story, I have been toying with the idea, and I keep going back to family, and I keep going back to the stories that I sort of heard and saw, and where I think were moving around me. Now it's just a matter of kind of catching the tail of the tiger and pulling it in, so that. But yes, that's something that I have been thinking of, and let's see what happens.
Jhalak denge short film ki. Will you tell us a little bit about, or it's under wraps?
No, I mean, wrapped or unwrapped, वो अब फिलहाल मेरे ही पास है, so it doesn't make any difference. So my husband is a Kashmiri Pandit. So it's a very interesting, again, and I'm, of course, born in a Muslim family, and that kind of Kashmiri Pandit Muslim, so you can understand it has its own baggage.
United Nations.
Yes, and it has its own baggage. So I kind of have based the short story on my mother-in-law, actually, who is largely says she's okay with everything. You can't be okay when you've lost your homeland and you've lost, your children have moved away, and so it's the question. It's the woman figure and her obsession with being okay when she's not. And that is the sort of the one line of it. And of course, then you have it's called Machli, and it's kind of fish out of water. So.
That's beautiful. I look forward to learning more about it. And now, of course, for the pièce de résistance, very kindly, Kausar has agreed to read something for us. Before I let you ask her questions, we have time, so please.
So the idea was that perhaps I'd read little pieces as we went along. So I thought instead of interrupting the flow of conversation, let's just talk. And at the end, I read a poem. So I'm just going to warn you, it's a slightly longish piece. It's around 6 or 7 minutes long.
यार आपको सुनने आया है, मुझे नहीं, तो
नहीं,
please,
but it's एक सुनने वालों का भी एक स्टैमिना होता है ना कि भाई अब
वो
हो
आप
गया.
जैसे नहीं होता है, वो आप जैसे नहीं है, हमको सुना ही देता है, चलो.
Okay, so I think this is a good example of my, collage style of writing. The name of this poem is Damadam Mast Calendar. साफ सफेद शफाफ कोहरे के घूंटे में लिपटी लिपटाई नई दुल्हन की तरह तू ऐसे दबे पांव आती है जैसे तू आई ही नहीं.
क्या बात है.
जैसे तू नई मुरादें ना लाई, जैसे तू पुरानी इश्कों को ना भुला पाई, जैसे तू दिल में घबराई ही नहीं, जैसे तू घबराते हुए भी ना मुस्कुराई, जैसे तूने आते ही पर्दे न बदले, जैसे चादर को खींच के ना शर्माई, जैसे तू बिस्तर पर बिछी ही नहीं, जैसे तूने बत्ती ना बुझाई, मगर तू आती है और तेरे आने से नज़र बदल जाती है, नज़ारा बदल जाता है, बीनाई बदल जाती है, घर बदल जाता है, घड़ी बदल जाती है, पलक झपकते ही सदी बदल जाती है.
क्या बात है.
ऐ माहे जनवरी तू इस हक से आती है कि वक्त भी नहीं देती और वक्त बदल जाती है. फरवरी तू अभी कुंवारा है. फरवरी तू अभी कुंवारा है, मस्त मगन मतवारा है, न कल की फिक्र न कल का मारा है, इश्क लड़ाएगा रिस्क उठाएगा, मगर ये ना भूल तू आने वाले माहों की उम्मीद है, सहारा है. बस अभी तो नींद से जागा है, अभी तो परचम उठाया है, सुन रहा है जमाना, देख रहा है जहां, तू किस जानिब जाएगा, तो कौन सा इनकलाब लाएगा ए माहे फरवरी, आगे है दरिया पीछे दौर पुराना है, बस इतना तय कर ले नौजवां, कश्ती में जाएगा या डूब के जाना।
वाह वाह, क्या बात है।
एक 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 दो एक साल फॉरवर्ड मार्च मार्च। ना तेरा सर्द दिल पूरी तरह पिघला है, ना तेरी गर्मी अभी चढ़ी है, ना तू कली ना गुल छड़ी है, मगर मार्च मुंह न बना, तू हर बोलों की बोली है।
वाह वाह।
तू आने वाले खुशवारियों की दुश्वारियों की दाई है, तू होली है लोड़ी है दूध की कटोरी है, पान की गिलोरी है आम की टोकरी है, 14वीं का लागे चांद सच बतलावे तो चकोरी है। ए माहे मार्च, मैं 2 दिन की धूप में कारी हो गई, तू तो अभी तक कोरी है।
क्या बात है।
April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead
Yes,
land,
TL, yes.
mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. हसरत का रस निचोड़ के यादों की सुराही भरने वाली माहे अप्रैल, चुड़ैल, तू सच में क्रूएल है री। ये फूलों का कालीन, ये हरी भरी डाली, क्या तेरे लिए खेल है री? क्यों देख के तेरी पाती, क्यों छू के तेरी बूटी, क्यों मैं भी बिछ गई बाग में, क्यों मुझको मोहब्बत सूझी। अप्रैल, चुड़ैल, तू सच में क्रूएल है री। माहे मई, तेरी बातों में किमाम की खुशबू है, हो तेरा आना भी गर्मियों की लू है, आजा छूटे ना टूटे ना अंगड़ाई, हो तेरी अंगड़ाई ना छूटे, तू आजा। माहे मई, तेरी हर शाम गुलजार साहब के नाम, बस इतने में मेरा काम तेरा काम तमाम। हिल रोड बांद्रा बम्बई में एक ऑल गर्ल्स कॉन्वेंट स्कूल है जहां मेरा माहे जून है। पहली पहली बारिश के छपाकों में है, नई कॉपियों पुरानी टेक्स्ट बुकों में है, ग्रैंड पियानो के लगाटों में है, लड़कपन के मासूम खेल कहानियों में है। उस स्कूल के गेट के इस तरफ जून तू प्यारी है, उम्मीदों की कुंवारी है, आने वाले वक्त की मज़ेदार सवारी है। और स्कूल के गेट के उस तरफ ओ जून तू डरावनी है, मैं जवाब दे दे के उकता गई, तू मुसलसल सवाली है, तू मुसलसल सवाली है, तू मुसलसल सवाली है। I don't believe in 3 things: God, weather reports, sun signs. I apologize. इनसे जहां मैंने दिल लगाया, जहां मैंने ईमान लाया, बेईमानी हो जाती है। लेकिन by God, I believe in mothers, like the Met Department camped on Mount Sinai. My mom was born on the 4th of July. मेरी किसी बात पर यकीन हो ना हो सुनने वालों, but please believe me when I say the earth was birthed by the mother of July. Yes, I am a Freudian frittata, born of the egg of July. बेधड़क बेपरवाह जिंदगी की जद्दोजहद से डील करना सिखाए, सारे माहों की माँ की आंख जुलाए। माह अगस्त आया, सर चकराया, मैंने पूछा तू क्या चाहता है? अगस्त ने नजर उठाई, झंडा टिकाया, कहा 14-15 लाइनों में दिलो दिमाग का बंटवारा करके बताता हूँ, सुनो। कोई वादिये कश्मीर में ढूंढे, कोई गोवा के बीचों में, कोई सुंदरबन के जंगल में, कोई बम्बई के जंगलों में। जो गांधी ने मांगी थी, जो रूसो ने बांधी थी, जो लेनिन की जाई थी, जॉन लेनिन ने गाई थी। मैं क्या चाहता हूँ? आज़ादी। तू क्या चाहता है? आज़ादी। अपने खुद से, अपनी खुदी से, अपने खुदा से आज़ादी। हम क्या चाहते हैं? आज़ादी। सितंबर, सितमगर, दिल्ली की कहावत है, मगर मौसम की बातें बनावट हैं। माह सितमगर की सितमगरी मौसम के हाल की नहीं, हाले दिल की है, जो सूखे पत्तों की तरह शाखों से गिरती है और खिड़की से सीधे तकिए पे टूटे ख्वाबों की तरह सरसराती है। दिल के द्वार किवाड़ बंद भी कर दिए तो दरवाजे के बाहर हवा से गोल गोल घूमते हुए यादों की तरह थरथराती है। सूखी सूखी सी मोहब्बत, टूटा फूटा सा दिल, माहे सितंबर, बड़ा सितमगर, बड़ी मुश्किल। दोपहर में दोहर ओढ़े जब माह अक्टूबर आंगन में दीप जलाता है, लगता है सब ठीक हो जाएगा। राम जी सीता को घर ले आएंगे, संवारेंगे, संभालेंगे, रावण को ध्वस्त करने वाले धोबी की बातों में नहीं आएंगे। हम सब मिलके दीपावली मनाएंगे। शाम को जब माह अक्टूबर शाल ओढ़ के सहन में नया चांद लाता है, लगता है सब ठीक हो जाएगा। शीर बनेगी, देख चढ़ेगी, जो मर्जी हम प्यार से पकाएंगे, खाएंगे, खिलाएंगे। हम सब मिलके ईद मनाएंगे। Thank you. Oh, November, nondescript, no offense, you need a twist. जैसे कभी कभी जिंदगी की सांझ को एक ट्विस्ट की ज़रूरत महसूस होती है, बड़े मियाँ को नई बेगम की ज़रूरत महसूस होती है, बड़ी बेगम को फरारी की सवारी की ज़रूरत महसूस होती है। माह नवंबर तू लगती मासूम है, बनाती है, ट्विस्ट कराती है, टिम लक लक टिम नचाती है। मुझे नाचना नहीं आता और मेरा आंगन भी टेढ़ा है, पर ओ नवंबर मुझे भी नाचने की ज़रूरत महसूस होती है। So, deck the boughs with deck the halls with boughs of holly. Fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly. Fa la 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 la. Here, here, oh here, there's a corner in my heart that's forever December. क्योंकि रब के बेटे यीशु का, सबके भाई सल्लू का, बीच में yours truly का हैप्पी बर्थडे वाला महीना है। शेक लेग, ईट सम केक, हो हार्ट ब्रेक वाला महीना है। आह, माह दिसंबर, माहों का पैगंबर, दमादम मस्त कैलेंडर। तू ही मेरा फर्स्ट लव, तू ही मेरा आखिरी प्यार, पर ऐ जनाबे वक्त आप पर हमें नहीं एतबार। कल को परसों की नहीं दरकार। कहते हैं आप लगाते हैं मरहम, जख्मों का भी तो रखिए हिसाब। अभी अभी तो दिल बहला था, अभी अभी तो दिन पहला था, फिर आखिरत करने क्यों आ जाते हैं खराब। हर बरस हर दरस बार 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 बार, ऐ जनाबे वक्त आप पर हमें नहीं आया।
क्या बात है।
Thank you, thank you.
That was glorious, joyous, and beautiful. Well,
thank you for your patience.
We have only 5 minutes. We can sit here and bask in the beauty of the words we heard. Or if you have a question that can match the beauty of those words, you may raise your hand. I'm messing with you. Yes, please. Quickly, we only have 5 minutes. We can take 2 questions. Yes. Sorry, we don't have time.
Thank you, thank you.
How do you manage to write such amazing, extraordinary songs, and do you put yourself in different compartments when you're writing such extraordinary love songs versus something like this? What inspires you?
I'm entirely led by the script, and the director. I feel more than the melody and the music composer, and sometimes the music producers and the music companies have this kind of, they're critical about this and they're not very pleased. But I'm entirely guided by the script and by the director. Like, for example, yesterday Imtiaz was speaking here, and I feel Irshad Kamal, he's a fabulous lyricist and a poet par excellence, but the work that he's done with Imtiaz is phenomenal. And I suppose that's the synergy, the script and the director, and to be able to guide you, give you direction. So that's what happens. There are very few songs that I've written, that have been written beforehand, or I had something, for example, माना के हम यार नहीं, वो एक गाना था जो एक गज़लनुमा चीज़ मैंने लिखी हुई थी, और परेशान. But otherwise, सुनो ना संगे मरमर, or लहरा दो, for that matter, I'm quite proud of
It's a
that
beautiful
song,
song.
because it's become kind of a patriotic and sports.
Azadi.
Yeah, but if you really pay
Listen
attention to
to,
the
yeah.
words, it says Sarkashi ka parcham lehra do, and
Exactly.
Sarkashi essentially means rebellion. So the script and the director.
Yeah, we'll take one more question. I'm very sorry, but you can continue to be Kausar's groupies after this event. So yes, please.
Thank you for a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up question
Ji.
to what was pointed out. I really love your work for Jubilee.
Ah,
And I would be curious about how you partnered with Vikram Motwane.
yes.
Because the lyrics of that particular series is so resonant of the 30s and 40s.
Absolutely,
So,
yes.
and every sentence from Uran Kotola to
Ah,
others.
I love
I'm
that
just
song.
curious
Yeah.
about the creative process and the notes that were given to you working with the director and writer.
Yeah. Again, thank you for appreciating this album, because it's my personal favorite.
It was
I enjoyed
beautiful,
working on it as well. 11 songs, I think. So first of all, fabulous working with Vikram. Again, one of the few directors who had clarity of thought. You have most often people come to me saying that we know what we don't want, but it'd be nice if you knew what you wanted. So, Vikram is one of them. He knows what he wanted. And it was really, well, simple for him, because the references were all songs that existed. Now, the difficulty was Amit Trivedi, the composer, and mine, because we needed to create new songs that felt like they belonged to that
Right,
era, but
right.
without without sounding like they were
Repetition.
yes, dated or repetitive or plagiarized. So, you had to find our own idiom, but it needed to belong. We were in Goa. We spent time, Amit, Vikram and I, and we kind of made the music there. We do that often. We go off to Goa.
Well,
to
also,
make music.
Kausar won an award for the best lyricist for that album, which
Yes.
remains actually my favorite now. So, on that award-winning note, I want to thank you all for sharing your lunchtime with the words
Yes, thank
of
you so
Kausar
much.
Munir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we need like 10 hours.